Alright, today I'm going to show you the difference of a EPDM roof, different ways to inspect it. Now, I've done previous ones on my channel before that were more residential structures. This one gives you a better example of a lower quality commercial structure as opposed to a medium to high quality residential, which was my last video. I will link that video to this one. And so a couple of things I regularly talk about is plating along the walls. And so on this one, as opposed to using a separate membrane, ending it at the wall, plating it, and then running up, they use what's called a reinforced underlayment securement strip, RUSS, sometimes shortened to RUS. And so they plated it every foot while pulling it tight. Then there's an adhesive strip there. They glue this out to here, then they use a primer, roll that in, and then continue gluing it up the wall. Now that's wonderful. That strip there is going to separate out a lot of air that might get underneath through the wall here into the system. That's going to pull it tight, keep it tight so that the walls don't start bridging out. Now that's almost the ideal way to do the wall. This can't here though, this double angle change. Some manufacturers, and for certain really high wind areas, you might have wanted to put a second layer of rust right here, plate through here, and adhesive on the bottom there. Now, I'm not saying that's necessary in this case. This is the bare minimum of what they needed given the situation. But if this were a bit of more high wind area or a higher end installation, you'd be seeing better. Now, this is from them pulling up the wall. Now, you do see some wrinkles there. Now, what caused that to end up wrinkling there is because they had a gap here, and as they were pushing up, they hit that gap and it caused a big wrinkle. But they did try to smooth it over and roll it out as best as they could. Now, that said, how could they have avoided this? Given the unevenness of the wall, there isn't many things that they could have done. What they should have done after the fact, once they realized the wrinkle, is push this wrinkle as far to here as they could, push that wrinkle from there. Then they could have done a cut straight down the middle and strip it in. And they should have been able to get rid of most of that. Now, if that were on the deck, that would definitely be a patch-worthy item. Being on the wall, we're not as concerned with it. Now, over here, you have an example of that. You can see the same thing happened here, and you can see that they did actually push the wrinkles out as best as they could and then patch it. But when they patched it, they stripped over a wrinkle. That should have been avoided. Another wrinkle here, that's tacky. It's a bubble right there. So what happened there is they used a little bit too much glue there and didn't let it flash long enough, didn't let it sit long enough, essentially. You'll notice bubbles all the way along. Now, I've seen, and we'll talk about the fasteners there, I've seen a lot worse. Those of you who follow my channel, you know that I see worse EPDM than this every day. This is like the bottom tier of commercial, which is about the same as the top tier of residential. Now here, these are screw heads. So there's a board here that was screwed into place, and rather than removing those screws, those are hex head screws. If they would have replaced those with pan head, those would have laid flat. If those were in the field, they would have to be patched. On the wall, they should be patched, or in this case, since they've already been gone over, what I would do is I would monitor it every few years, and then eventually you're going to have to come back, put a little cut around this, pull this out and replace the fastener, then strip that whole wall in. If this was something brand new, that's something you can force them to do right after they'd finished the roof. Given this roof has been here, we are doing a 7-year inspection. There's no reason to fix it now, and the statute of limitations here is 6 years. Now, I'm not going to touch on the parapet. This was pre-existing. This was not altered. So as much as I don't like it, there's nothing I can do about it. And nothing really to do about it. Here, we all know my favorite part to pick on, because I've never once seen a single ply roofer get it right. These plates have to be between 6 and 12 inches away. So that's about 2.5, that's about 3, That's about 3, so that should be held back to here. 6 to 12 inches back from the edge, 6 to 12 inches back from each edge. But that's every board. But something you'll notice here, as opposed to the last few EPDM roofs I've shown on this channel, these boards are actually staggered about 3 feet. That's more than enough. Some manufacturers do require 50%, but in this manufacturer's case, they only require at least 25%. That's more than 25%, probably closer to 30-35%. So that's more than acceptable. Again, we've got plated walls with the rust strip. Love it. They saw an angle change here, so they stripped it in with uncured EPDM. That's a good way to do it. They also put lap seal on top of it. Now, a lot of people think that sealant is a bad sign of poor workmanship, but in this case with EPDM, even after you do a good patch, it's always good to do some black lap sealant on your uncured. Really helps it stick together. Now, that's a poor job. That could have been stripped in, but that's something we can definitely make sure gets patched. Now, you will notice the seam tape's out a little further here, how it started to wrinkle. And you'll also notice the blue lines there. Now, those blue lines, this is not a spec issue, this is just a preference of the manufacturer. Those blue lines are helped to mark where you need to adhere the next sheet. Those should be underneath that sheet. So they ran the sheet, basically spun it around. Not a big deal at all. Seam tapes, not the best. But that said, nothing that probably needs to be fixed. Patch out in the middle of the field, looks like they might have popped a wrinkle or popped a bubble. No big deal here. Now, they ran a target around this pipe because they were going to hand flash it. I disagree with that. This was perfect for a pre-manufactured boot. And when they ran this target, they did patch all 4 corners, because whenever you have 2 pieces of seam tape overlap, like right here you can see, right here you can see, you have to patch that. Then they ran lap sealant around it. That's perfect. That pipe flashing could have come out a little bit further, but given how small the pipe was, that's a little difficult. It's not perfect, but there's nothing wrong with it, as is. Here they forgot to put the patches on the corner, but if you'll notice the different material used and the discoloration between it, that is a different material. So that was probably done post installation when they removed something after the fact. So maybe one of their repair crews did it, maybe another company did it, but that's not a part of the original install. That uses a different brand of seam tape than that one does. That is a different brand of EPDM as well. And you can just barely notice it by the discoloration. This brand has a bit more talc in it on the surfacing than that one does. So more than likely, this is probably Carlisle brand, based off of what I've seen. And I think that is Firestone, based off of what I can see. Now we're just kind of going row by row. Hey, we've got another patch there. Now that is a different manufacturer's EPDM. I don't know if the camera can pick it up, but you can tell by the just kind of the texture to the face of it. So that was probably a patch after the fact. I will say this seam right here isn't too great with the wrinkles, but I've seen a lot worse. Patched over a bubble. Again, stripping in the 90s. Beautiful. Great stripping. That is a bolt sticking through from the underside, so is that one. Not much you can do there. Honestly, I probably wouldn't have done that if I would have put a patch there. If the manufacturer told me that's what they wanted, I would have put that 6-inch patch, then put a 9-inch patch over it. Ideally, I would rather run a pitch pan there, but they may be leaving it exposed with just a patch because they plan on using it in the future. I've had situations like that. You'll see another piece, or another one right there, another one down there. So it is very much possible that these are here for future use, or there's something that was recently removed. And so that's something I'm not going to hold against them. Again, target on a pipe that could have been pre-manufactured. But again, great work stripping on the corners, great work rolling it in. Good work there. Now we do have some hail damage to the HVAC unit. I apologize for the audio of this one. I can only imagine it's awful as is. We've got grease spitting units running onto the ground. Pure lack of maintenance. And I'll say this about every restaurant owner everywhere. I have worked for so many corporations, done so many roofs. I used to have a contract with Jack in the Box. Used to have a contract with a lot of the local Sonics. I've worked for a lot of individual McDonald's. I've worked for Village Inn, Denny's, and dozens of restaurant chains. This is a problem everywhere. Even at casinos, you see it all the time. Anywhere that runs a kitchen, they don't properly clean out their machines regularly and they just let it run. Now, one of my bigger concerns right now is that these two have trash bags over them, but they're clearly still running. So that might be something to bring up to the owner. Again, excellent rust job in the 90s, love it. Not too concerned about the plating issue in the insulation boards, and even though I complain about those insulation boards everywhere I go, that has 12 plates per board. That plate's good, that plate's good, that plate's good. Some of the plates are bad, every one of the corners is bad, but some of the field ones are good. In an area like this is going to be just fine. It's one of those things, when it comes to the plating issues of the insulation, the only time you're going to call them out on it is if the roof is already on the point where you should probably replace it anyway due to poor insulation, and that's just kind of the extra nudge you need. This roof is nowhere near that, so I'm not even looking at that concern. Now you can tell that they ran a board up this angle change here, plated it in. Now the question is why? Were they doing that as a cant? Were they doing that because there was a gap in the wall they wanted to go over? Either way, whatever reason they did it, there might be a couple bubbles in it. They did a great job otherwise. You can tell, so because it lays flat like this with the smooth top, you can tell what they did is they shaved it until it fit properly. So it's a trapezoid shaped piece. Brilliant move. Good professional way to do it. T-patched the corners, stripped in their drip edge using cured. Now we're going to go back to that drip edge once I'm further away from the unit and you can hear me better. There is an issue there. This needs to be cleaned up, thrown away. That's DirecTV's fault, not the roofers. Because whenever they come out and replace a new one, they just leave the old one there. You can tell that's broken. So I know the history of this area. So what happened is that I would almost bet that this took some damage during a major hailstorm that happened 6 years ago. DirecTV came out, replaced it, and just said, yeah, screw this. I'm too lazy to remove my own equipment, and left it on the roof. I see this every day from DirecTV. And sometimes you'll even see them grab other people's satellites that are no longer in use and just toss them. The difference between Dish and DirecTV, they both do that. They both do that to each other. It's a constant issue. So always be aware of that if you're on commercial and you switch carriers. Unit overall looks good. Look at that nice corner. They used 9-inch uncured so that they can make sure that they get at least 3 inches on each side. Good way to do it. They had to cut to get around the pipe here. That should have had a target around it and an extra plate. That is something that eventually will cause a maintenance item to pop up, but we've probably still got another 10-15 years. So I will put in an item just to make sure that they at least look at it now and again. That pipe flashing looks good. A little bit of pool of grease on the edge there. Nothing I'm not used to in a restaurant. Love this on the satellite dish, and here they put a slip sheet that is 60 mil thick. EPDM, that's a good way to go. Now this patch here, they did not let the primer fully set before rolling it in. That's a bit of an issue. Now I have an issue with this. Look at that hail damage. With this drip edge. And the reason I have an issue with this drip edge is it's fastened down well. You can see they fastened it every 4 to 5 inches, but you only got a 2-inch flange. You're supposed to be able to flash onto this 3 inches, so that minimum flange size should be 3 on EPDM. And that's really my big issue. They should have done a 3-inch flange and then staggered their fasteners as opposed to just doing a row. That way they could get a proper flashing in. It's going to get some extra wind resistant. It's going to be better for the edge there. It's going to be better at blocking out wind to the membrane here because wind can get up underneath there. They've got a nice 6-inch size gutter here too, which is great. All except for the fact that it's filling with grease. Now I don't mind that there's a seam there. This could have been done seamless, easy. And that looks like it's the only seam. But it also looks like they changed materials right there and then just painted a new piece. So it could be that this one was damaged somehow and they just cut in a new piece. Pilot hole right there. Exact same size hole, but it's all the way drilled through there. So probably when they added the condenser for this, they put the hole in the wrong spot. And just like all too common with HVAC, they just left the hole there. Because why not? I mean, there's plenty of reasons why not. Just, you know, that's the mentality. Cap metal fastened every 18 to 24 inches. A couple spots that are closer to 30. Realistically, going by code and the wind speed at the time this was assembled, they could get away with 30 inches easily. And given where this is and the lack of code enforcement here, they probably could have gotten away with not fastening it at all. Wouldn't have been to code, but code around here doesn't inspect. Now what I don't like is that they fasten the outside. What they should have done is put a clip here, and then that would have kept fasteners off the outside of the metal, would have made it look prettier. You'll see that's what they did on the upper level there. But down to here, probably because that was the only 2 pieces of cap metal they actually had to do, they just didn't want to use clip. Nice outside corner, inside corner, they pig-eared it. And so what a pig ear is that when you have a piece of membrane, you just use one continual piece of membrane, you take the piece that goes up here, take the piece that goes up there, and then fold it with the fold going upward. So they pig-eared it, great detail, ideal detail. Then they ran over it with another piece of membrane. Again, amazing work there. They kept this termination bar low so that nobody would see it. Sealed it with polyurethane. I bet that's Sikaflex right there. Again, overall, great details. There's a couple hiccups here and there, but this is probably one of the best EPDMs I've gotten to inspect in a while. Almost nothing here that the manufacturer would have flagged, nothing here that the code enforcement ever would have been able to find. Not to say that there isn't code violations. We can talk about the installation board being a violation, but nothing that your average code inspector is going to find, because bear in mind that code inspectors tend to be the bottom of the barrel. Manufacturer is the next step up. Manufacturer probably wouldn't have had any issues here. The only issue is that second layer of plate right there. Might have come up with the manufacturer if they had inspected it, but even then, not a huge deal. And depending on what year, and even some of their inspectors would have just let that fly. So yeah, here's an example of a much better looking EPDM than I'm used to showing you guys. Just wanted everyone to get a chance to see. This is kind of, I'm going to say, the lower quality for a commercial installation, but it's a much higher quality than what you're almost ever going to find residential.